horrifying scene in Charlottesville as this.
We condemn this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence on many sides.
I think the president nailed it. He condemned.
I want the world to know, and it is not who we are as Americans.
You have white supremacist, neo-Nazi sympathizers apparently in the White House.
In a couple of months' time, China's ruling Communist Party will hold its 19th Congress, a meeting that takes place every 5 years to select the leadership of the party and the country. This time around, President Xi Jinping will be seeking a second term, which he is expected to get. As he moves to consolidate his power, the president has called on the country's media to play their part. A series of directives has been issued by the party's publicity department, instructing news outlets to tout the president's grand vision for China, especially his trillion-dollar pet mega project, an infrastructure venture called the BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative. The propaganda machine is also trying to shape the conversation on social media. Censors are vetting political jokes and commentary. New laws are restricting who can distribute the news and which VPNs, virtual private networks, can be used to circumvent what's come to be known as the Great Firewall of China. Beijing says its new online laws are designed to protect what it calls cyber sovereignty. The Listening Post's Meenakshi Ravi now on control and censorship in China in the run-up to the 19th Congress.
Last month, at the 90th anniversary of the Chinese People's Liberation Army, President Xi Jinping sent a clear message to the country over the airwaves.
你们要坚定不移，坚持党对军队绝对领导的根本原则，党指向哪里，就打到哪里。
In nearly 5 years as president of the People's Republic of China, Xi Jinping has strengthened the Communist Party's grip on media across the country.
加坚定自觉地维护以习近平同志为核心的党中央权威和集中统一领导。
Among the recurring themes, nationalism, loyalty to the party, and unquestioning allegiance to the president.
只有每个人都为美好梦想而奋斗，才能汇聚起实现中国梦的磅礴力量。
Messages pushed across multiple media platforms as the 19th Congress of the Communist Party approaches.
The
approaching 19th Congress is probably the most important of its kind since the Cultural Revolution. It will determine the future of China's political situation, especially Xi Jinping's personal future, and whether he can be re-elected. Control of the media is as strict as ever, but this time it's particularly stringent on both online and traditional outlets.
Because there are others within the party hierarchy who may want to challenge or make it more difficult for him to achieve his objective. He won't want that to happen. The people who work for him in the propaganda department knows exactly what he would not want.
A really good example was recently there was an announcement that the Communist Party boss in Chongqing was being investigated for corruption. The English language Hong Kong newspaper that is sort of sold across the border had one of the front page articles cut out, even though the Communist Party authorities had announced the investigation. There was something in the content of that story that they did not agree with and physically cut out that article from every single issue being sold.
Chinese citizens may not be seeing much coverage of political purges and other intrigues prior to the Congress, but they have definitely heard of the president's signature project, the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI. This mammoth scheme to build infrastructure along the ancient Silk Route, from Rotterdam in the Netherlands to Moscow in Russia to Xi'an in China, touches on more than 60 countries, involves trillions of dollars of investment, and, in the party's view, requires a giant PR effort. The Communist Party's propaganda department issues daily directives on how the BRI is to be reported, and the state broadcaster CCTV has just premiered the first of a 6-part documentary series, selling the BRI to the Chinese people.
将推动全球贸易与投资的资金融通，有助于国际金融体系的优化与调整。
The BRI media strategy also includes an army of online commentators, shaping the conversation on Chinese social media.
The plans include use of a network of reviewers. They pretend to be ordinary internet users who take the party line, peddling out messages to promote the BRI project. But without institutional oversight and with media so strictly controlled, such a project will inevitably have a lot of corruption. This lack of transparency runs the risk of driving the world into a corrupt project.
The state media narrative is about connectivity, the Chinese going out to the world to end the 100 years of humiliation so the Chinese people are more proud. We have to remember that the media industry is part of the Chinese Communist Party's governance. So it is used to mobilize, to get people to support the cause.
The Belt and Road Initiative, because Xi Jinping has attached his name to it very prominently, there's very little space for more critical pieces looking at some of the problematic issues. You know, one of them is the fact that China is going to be building coal-fired power plants in many developing countries, which is obviously not good for the environment. But you never see an article that is just focusing on the negative aspects of this project.
The relationship between Chinese media and the Communist Party was forged by Chairman Mao, founder of the party and the country's leader for nearly 3 decades. In 1942, Mao said, "The struggle for the liberation of the Chinese people has to be fought on 2 fronts, the pen and the gun." There have been periods of loosened media restrictions over the past years, but now is definitely not one of those times. President Xi's ambitions for China have meant the screws have been tightened considerably. Once critical investigative outlets like the Southern Weekend newspaper and the Beijing magazine have been reined in, and a string of journalists have been paraded on CCTV, confessing to crimes. In 2016, Xi toured the 3 major state-owned outlets, news agency Xinhua, national newspaper China Daily, and the Central Chinese Television headquarters. He asked for the media's absolute loyalty to the party.
Who is the party? And of course, it meant him, the leader of the party, and absolute loyalty is therefore to him, that they should not say anything that challenge the position or the reputation or the integrity or the standing of the leader of the Communist Party, President Xi Jinping.
Policing online media has required a much more hands-on strategy from the state. For years, the so-called Great Firewall of China has been blocking access to numerous foreign websites. A recent ban on VPNs, software that enables Chinese to circumvent that firewall, is now reinforcing the blockade, cementing the idea of an internet bounded by national borders, what the Chinese leadership calls cyber sovereignty. There are also armies of online police, both automated and human, monitoring topics being discussed on social media and instant messaging. In July, Chinese activist and Nobel Peace Prize winner Liu Xiaobo died. On Chinese social media, WeChat, Weibo, WhatsApp, any discussion of his death was immediately blocked.
A candle emoji that people use on Weibo to sort of signify vigil or mourning was suddenly banned. People were trying to send messages about Liu Xiaobo or about his death, and those messages would never get sent. And it has you sort of scratching your head thinking, oh, is there something wrong with my phone? Is there something wrong with the software?
All cartoons showing Winnie the Pooh and Friends are now censored because somebody put 2 pictures up. One shows President Xi standing up inspecting troops on a Chinese jeep, and then Pooh Bear sitting on a toy car. Oh, well, we can't have that, can we? Because that is not entirely appropriately respectful of the president. But they were there for a while. So the ingenuity and the imagination of some of the journalists can still allow something to be put out there until the propaganda department catches us up and then close it down.
There is a difference between online conversation and offline conversation. So if the conversation stays within a small circle, that's fine, no problem. But if it goes everywhere, then it will disappear. So very often you might see people saying, this is going to be censored in the next minute, so please read.
The Mandarin word for propaganda is xuanchuan. It doesn't carry a negative connotation the way the English word does. It's a much more neutral term. The Chinese government even has a ministry of propaganda. That's what they call it. With the political stakes so high for President Xi Jinping, Beijing is building a bigger, better firewall to block dissident content online or even in mainstream news media. The 19th Congress is coming, and the government is in Xuan overdrive.